good evening. You're watching India Ascends. I'm Gaurie, Dwivedi. The next 30 minutes, we get you stories about India's rise, India's ascent from around the world. But first up, as always, let's get you the stories that we're tracking in this episode of India Ascends. Trump tariffs kick in on the 7th of August. Ahead of that, government says that there will be minimal impact of the Trump tariff tsunami. Donald Trump strikes oil deal with the dead economy Pakistan. US snubs India, slashes tariff rates on Pakistan. We tell you what's really the deal here. Food delivery to jet engines. Dipender Goyal dreams big. LAT Aerospace to build Make in India jet engines. We tell you how this will change the game for Indian startups. IMF upgraded India's growth rate from 6.2 to 6.4%. Not enough for leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi, who agreed with Trump's assessment of terming India a dead economy. Opposition leader echoes Trump's remark. Who will succeed former Vice President of India Jagdeep Dhankar? India will hold elections for the Vice President's post on the 9th of September. The big story this week, viewers, on India Ascends. In 6 days from now, Trump's tariffs will kick in. The 25% tariff and an unspecified levy over purchase of Russian oil. Now, while calling Prime Minister Modi a great friend, Donald Trump went on a delusional anti-India rant. Now, tariffs are essentially a tool that Trump has weaponized in the past 6 months to get what he wants. Whether it is ceasefires with several other countries, or whether it's oil deals or even critical minerals, access to that. Now, the impact of the hike is unclear. Not the entire goods exported by India to the US will be subjected to higher tariffs. Pharmaceuticals, electronics, all of these are going to be exempted. So even if one assumes that $40 billion of exports are impacted, that's about half of it, the hit on the GDP may be significant, but not very high, probably about 0.2 to 0.3% of the GDP. That's what is being assessed. But a few things need to be kept in mind, viewers. India has not given in. Unlike an EU or a UK or a Japan, India is holding its ground and is willing to weather the storm. A mercurial Trump is primarily speaking to his political base, the one that exists between the two coasts in America, and is demanding access to the Indian farm sector. Just one particular commodity tells you the complete lack of thought that has been put behind these tariffs, and that is soya. An important crop for Donald Trump's MAGA base. China is its biggest buyer. Now, with China holding out, Trump then went and sought the next big buyer. Well, which is that? That's Brazil. And if Brazil is not taking in, then it has gone ahead and slashed massive tariffs on Brazil as well, which is the next big buyer of soya. Well, you guessed it right, it's India. So what's Trump doing there as a pressure tactic? Showing the fear of additional tariffs. This impulsive attitude, viewers, comes even as the rest of the relationship between India and US remains robust and is poised to grow. And this particular product, this particular commodity, soya, tells you the impulsive nature with which Donald Trump hasn't put any thought whatsoever as far as these tariffs are concerned. But the future of the India-US relationship, let's get you a word in that from the MEA.
We have a strong defense and energy partnership with the United States, which has been strengthened in the last several years. There is a potential for this partnership to grow further under the India-US Compact for the 21st century. Our ties with any country, or all the ties that we have with various countries, they stand on their own merit, and they should not be seen from the prism of a third country. As far as India-Russia relations are concerned, we have a steady and time-tested partnership.
It's never been about purchase of Russian oil per se, but about Trump's political consideration. But what happens if the world's second largest oil importer evaluates options other than the cheaper Russian oil that's available? Higher energy bills for all, not just for Indians, but for all. And that includes the average American as well. This report tells you more of that.
When you buy cheaper, you save. But when the tap runs dry, the price of every drop goes sky high. And if India, one of the world's biggest oil importers, is forced to turn off the Russian faucet, the whole world might feel the burn. India currently gets over a third of its oil from Russia, and it's not just any oil. It's heavily discounted, allowing India to keep pump prices in check and its fiscal math under control. But now that deal is under fire. With a new 10-day deadline for Russia to strike peace with Ukraine, Trump has turned up the heat. Countries still buying from Moscow risk facing biting secondary sanctions. And for New Delhi, that could mean oil imports jumping $8 to $10 billion and domestic fuel prices peaking by 8 to 12%.
LPG, natural gas, crude oil, there are multiple sources from where they can be accessed, and there are multiple discussions going on.
But India isn't losing sleep just yet. India has diversified oil imports from 27 to over 40 countries. New suppliers like Guyana, Canada and Brazil are stepping in. Still, there's a catch. If India walks away from Russian oil, the demand for alternatives will spike globally, tightening supply chains, driving up prices and creating a domino effect. Global prices may spike by $5 to $8 a barrel and gasoline could cross $4 per barrel. Who pays then? The American consumer. So here's the million-barrel question. If Trump penalizes India for buying cheap Russian oil, only to watch US voters pay more at the pump, what will Trump say then?
Remember, trade talks between India and US are still ongoing. No matter Donald Trump's threats, a key US trade delegation is set to visit India later this month. Yet at the same time, India must diversify its trade ties, pursue more FTAs. We've done so with the UK, that's our template, and because that's the only way we'll be able to protect ourselves, our industry, from American unpredictability that's coming in from the Trump administration. All right, viewers, let's get you an important voice to talk more about which way is the India-US trade relationship and the larger strategic relationship headed after Donald Trump's rants. And who better than Pramit Pal Chaudhary joining us for more on this. Pramit, good to have you on the show. Let me start by asking you the unusually harsh rants that have come in for Donald Trump. He's not a diplomatic person. He's known to speak his mind. But this is unusually harsh even by his standards.
So I think a couple of points to be made here. The negotiations that are stuck right now, if you want, are on dairy, soya, automobiles, and some other digital areas. Of these, soya and dairy are politically very important for President Trump. They're also important for Prime Minister Modi. But the MAGA support base that Trump has, the farmers in the middle America that have voted for him in Nebraska, Kansas, the Dakotas, they grow these crops. So this is very important for him, especially at a time when China, the single largest buyer of American soya in particular, has stopped buying them because as part of their hardball negotiating tactics with the United States. So he's a little desperate, if you wish, for an alternative. So this is not just about trade, this is about his domestic politics. In the same way, obviously, that agriculture and soy is very much part of Prime Minister Trump's Prime Minister Modi's internal domestic political situation. So that's one element of it. But there is, you're right, an edge to this. Trump is not a diplomatic person. He abuses, and if you read, he abuses and curses people on a regular basis, including, the Prime Minister of Canada, the leaders of Europe, countries that are formal treaty allies of the United States. It's part of his negotiating style. If you read his book, The Art of the Deal, he always says that the game is to first get leverage on that other person. In other words, find some way to arm twist him, to get an edge on him, and then push and push and push and scream and shout and whatever. And then at the end of it, suddenly say, okay, we have a deal. And then shake hands and we all smiles and then move on to the next deal. So that's part of his negotiating style. It's one that a real estate developer, it might make sense. It, in my view, doesn't make sense with the president of the most powerful country in the world, but he is what he is.
Pramit, it's one aspect to actually rant when it comes to India. But the very public embrace of Pakistan, talking about, potential oil deals with Pakistan, how does that really, change the dynamic for India, US, especially in the wake of these very public embrace of Islamabad by the US?
I don't think it'll have much impact in a sense that the optics are poor, but there is no substance between the US and Pakistan. If you want to put it this way, the Trump administration kind of works in 3 or 4 different levels. There is President Trump himself, who runs, if you wish to put it politely, a highly personalized form of policy making. And it's almost whimsical depending on what he gets interested in or excited about. Second is his family. And this is very important because his family is basically about making money. And I think this is a number of countries, including Pakistan. There's a very good article in the Economic Times about this, but other newspapers have reported this, that the family has created, for example, crypto funds, which are designed, the World Liberty Fund and so on, which are effectively designed to say, donate money to the family, and we can give you access to the president. And Pakistan has put an unusually large amount of money into those type of funds. So it's a reasonably cheap way, if you wish, to win access to the Oval Office. And I think this is one of the reasons why Trump is prepared to meet people like Munir, even though Munir has very little to offer. But then there is the rest of the administration, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, the intelligence structure, all of whom, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard, even the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, very clear in their minds that India is the future partner that America needs to be working with, but they do not always control where the president goes, or I should say the president doesn't always listen to them. The problem for Pakistan is that these are the people who actually implement the policy, and they have no interest in Pakistan. They do not see Pakistan bringing anything to the table. Its economy is smaller than the city of Mumbai. It has incredible debt problems. It is on a permanent IMF drip. It's catering one crisis to another. Everybody, even in Pakistan, is laughing at the idea that they can find oil in Pakistan.
Indeed, everybody is, and so are we right here, and we're going to decode that. But thanks so much, Pramit Pal Chaudhary, for joining us on this edition of India Sense. Well, as delusional Donald ranted against India, he also announced a deal with Pakistan to jointly develop the latter's oil reserves. Now, this has nothing to do with Pakistan's oil reserves. It ranks 52nd in any reserves whatsoever. There are 350 million barrels that the country actually has. It is 0.021% in terms of global oil, negligible. What Donald Trump is really trying to do here is very simple. What he's trying to do is get more than a foothold in Pakistan. Now, ahead of America's pounding of Iranian nuclear bases, there was a heightened American interest in the Pakistani bases for ensuring that there's proximity. And now it seems Trump may be interested in access to Balochistan, the region that's actually very rich in mineral deposits, the region which is strategically close to the Iranian border, and the region which has deep Chinese presence. Now, what has Asim Munir managed to do? He thought he's gone for a fine dining expedition to the US, but what he has come back with is a huge problem that's actually compounded. On one end, there is the Chinese who want assurance and guarantees that their investments and people in Balochistan will be protected. And on the other end, there is a huge possibility that Donald Trump may be keen to actually get a share of Balochistan's rich mineral reserves. Munir's game of strategically playing one power against the other are pretty much over. Even Donald Trump knows that Pakistan is a country that's living on bailouts. The only real dead economy in the world is the one that exists in Islamabad. There are zero prospects whatsoever of any oil. Not till $5 billion and 5 years are actually invested to even know the potential. There is no company in the world who's going to do that. So let's be very clear. This move by Donald Trump will mean yet another opportunity for the Pakistan's military to use Balochistan's natural wealth to fund terror proxies. Donald Trump's move could ignite resource wars and fuel potential insurgency amongst local Balochi population who anyway feel cheated, violated and exploited. What is really Munir gaining here? Absolutely nothing whatsoever. All right, viewers, on that note, a quick break. We come back with lots more on the other side of India Sense. Stay with us. Viewers, US President Donald Trump has his eyes set on one prize alone. And that is the Nobel Peace Prize. Yet his pursuits to end the wars, whether it's in Gaza or in Ukraine, have totally failed. And explaining his desperation to tell his people that he ended the India-Pakistan conflict in May, this explains it. So what if it had nothing to do with the truth whatsoever? And this report tells you why Donald Trump is getting more and more frustrated with Vladimir Putin and why that is leading him to come up with the multiple rants that he is against India.
I'm disappointed in President Putin. Very disappointed in him.
He made big promises to the world when he came to power, vowing to end wars in 24 hours. Yet, 6 months later, US President Donald Trump hasn't learnt one thing. Using personal relationships as leverage can only get you so far. Washington is growing increasingly frustrated with both Russian President Putin and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu as the wars rage on with no end in sight. President Donald Trump hasn't found his recent phone calls with the war-entangled leaders encouraging, expressing his disappointment publicly, issuing repeated ultimatums, none of which seem to be working. The Russian president continues to make empty promises of ceasefire talks while ramping up attacks on Ukrainian cities. Meanwhile, Israel's strikes in Syria were already testing the White House's patience. Add to it images of starving children in Gaza and mounting international pressure, with France, UK and Canada pledging to recognize the Palestinian state, added to Trump's woes.
Next time you speak to Netanyahu, what will you ask him to do?
Well, I'm going to say, look, we're giving money and we're giving food, but we're over here and we're over in the United States, and I think I can speak for the Prime Minister. We're giving money and things. He's got to sort of like run it. Well, I want them to make sure they get the food. I want to make sure they get the food, every ounce of food. I think you want the same thing.
Even this one time, North Korean pen pal Kim Jong-un seems to be unresponsive to Trump's friendly overtures. The cracks are showing in Trump's uniquely personal approach to foreign policy. The peace deals Trump once promised that he hoped might win him a Nobel Prize remain elusive and out of reach.
Viewers, for long it was said India was only creating startups focused on quick delivery, focused only on the lower end of the food chain. Well, as if on cue, Zomato's Dipender Goyal has announced big, bold ambitions to build the future of mass aviation, low cost and accessible. And launching a new startup in the aerospace is LAT Aerospace. Gaurie aims to build India's first gas turbine engine from scratch. Well, the goal here is to manufacture lightweight, efficient and flight-ready equipment made in India, making flying as easy as taking a bus. Gas turbines are mainly used in aviation, where they supply the propulsion power for jet engines. LAT Aerospace plans to power short-haul regional aircraft, challenging India's historic limitations in this space. Now, if Zomato is successful in this transition, then it offers huge insights into how startups that begin on the quote-unquote 10-minute food delivery model finally move on to innovation, research and development and higher end of technology. And yes, towards indigenous manufacturing. India has a very deep and robust startup ecosystem, but the landscape has been focused on the lower end of the quick delivery model. In fact, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal had lamented that there are just about 1,000 startups that actually exist in deep state. The Dipinder Goyal's transition will hopefully satisfy Piyush Goyal and the hunger that India has to be able to move up the technology value chain. Well, turning attention to the Worldview segment on the show, ahead of its first anniversary in part, the interim government has indicated that the elections will be held in Bangladesh in February next year. The interim government in Bangladesh under Professor Yunus completes 1 year in office on the 8th of August, and one of the biggest charges against the government has been its failure to hold elections. The Yunus government had focused on undertaking key reforms which many felt did not have the mandate to conduct these reforms, and one of the biggest charges against the Yunus government has been its failure to protect minorities, particularly the Hindu minorities. Remains to be seen whether elections will pave the way for a government that will address these concerns. On to Myanmar, where after 4 long years, Myanmar's military government is all set to hold elections in December this year, a move with major ramifications for India's neighborhood. Since 2021, Myanmar has been in chaos, entrenched in a civil war since the coup against Aung San Suu Kyi's elected civilian government. While the polls are unlikely to change the status quo, with coup leader holding on to all major levers of power as acting president and chief of armed forces. It signals Myanmar's willingness to be recognized by the international sphere as a legitimate government, though it is feared this change will be cosmetic, with atrocities against civilians likely to continue. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Sense. Thanks so much for watching.